Hi, Trisha. It's great to have you on here. How about if we just start right there? What was going on while you were taking that picture with Scott and that group?
Yeah, well, I've learned more about how to get in ice baths and watching people and breathing. So that's why I never go in them.
Smart. So breath actually makes you more intelligent than
Yep. You get more oxygen to the brain,
right. Scott, are you jumping back in here?
Back in, yes.
All right,
So
cool.
good thing I went through this training, otherwise I'd be losing my shit right now. Anyway, so the breath work has been a game changer. I came back, I went out to Poland partly because in Butte County, where I live in Chico, we had the big fire out here. And I really wanted to kind of find ways to get people unstuck from the trauma. So a couple months later, we actually did a Wim Hof weekend out here. And we brought people in from the community, and it made a huge difference for those who attended it. And so I couldn't think of a better person to share the art and science of breath than Trisha. She really opened up some new gateways for me, and I'm hoping she can open up some gateways to you all. And part of this series that we're doing is really to kind of get people to be thinking about, in May, we're going to open up a 30-day art and science of practice experience in the Flow Challenge. And we want people to kind of be thinking about what is it that they want to start practicing a little bit more. And again, I couldn't think of a better person to share the wisdom of breath than Trisha. So Trisha, thank you for giving us some of your time. And I'm looking forward to riffing with you and hoping having you share some of the knowledge with our community so they can learn a little bit more about why breath is so critical. And so maybe we can start with how you got into this work and give us a little bit of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, by the way. We are completely aligned in, our messages and what we think, so we could talk for hours on all of it. So I appreciate you guys bringing me in. So I'm a trained sports chiropractor. That's kind of where I started. And I went into chiropractic not necessarily because I wanted to be a chiropractor, but because it gave me the scope of practice that I wanted, which was to be able to diagnose, treat, and do rehab exercise. For me, it was always about empowering people in their own health and not having somebody be dependent on me for something. And I just developed my own practice through that. And, I can never just look at a knee or a hip or a shoulder. I always looked at the whole human and, not just the time I was spending with them, but what were they doing, in their lifestyle? What were they doing every day that affects their pain, that affects their, recovery? So, I always asked about sleep, stress, breathing came into play very early. I was certified in what's called dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. It's a big mouthful, but it's called DNS, and it's actually from the Prague School of Rehab. And what they've done is studied babies for years and looked at how babies move, how they breathe, and how we can actually use those same positions as adults for rehab. And that's the first time I got introduced to how important breathing is and the way we breathe. So I started using breathing initially for pain, especially in low backs, with athletes, obviously, to make them much better. And that was the first time I started using it. So it's been over a decade with that. And as I was looking at people's lifestyle, I'm like, okay, I'm going to really dig into our biology. Like, what makes an optimal human, right? And how do we become one? Will we ever know that? Probably not. But how do we become this optimal human, and using what's already inside of us? And of everything that I've learned, like literally, if somebody just paid me to learn and read, that's what I would do for my life. I would just be a student. But yes, Damon. So of all the things, though, and I know you guys know this as well, everything goes back to the simple things. It doesn't take some, $10,000 equipment and hacking things, and, it never does. It always comes back to the very, very simple things. And of course, us actually showing up and doing them, which is part of this, the art and science of practice, right? So on that journey of really discovering, how we can use our biology to be at our best, I was introduced to Wim Hof through a podcast, and I just dove right in to Wim Hof, mainly because it was something that I was like, oh, well, you don't have to believe in anything. There's these techniques where, you got to believe in them, or there are a few things that are kind of not in alignment with some science. But with Wim Hof method, it's 3 pillars: breathing, cold, and mindset. Like, well, that's just human stuff we should be doing every day, right? So I just dove in. They've actually brought me in. I'm one of the instructors for the Wim Hof Academy, which is where all of our instructors come through. And it's one thing that I teach a lot of, but have just really expanded and brought a whole nother aspect to them as far as the anatomy and looking at breathing, not only for our nervous system, but biomechanically, what it actually does in our body. So that's how I got started, and just took off down a bunch of rabbit holes into breathing. And yeah.
That's awesome, Trisha. I am struck by a few things that I really resonate with, and that is like that whole concept that we don't have to believe to find the efficacy in some of these skills, and also just sort of the deeply human element of breathing and movement. I think for a lot of people, it is the tendency to go to the gadgets and the feedback, and to kind of go down that road. Am I doing it right? And did I breathe? Was my inhale long enough? All that stuff. And actually, the thing I was really most fascinated to talk to you about is the biomechanics, diaphragm, rib cage, all of those areas where we can actually, potentially become more optimal breathers. Can you just explore with us a little bit of just the physiology of what that actually means, and how, any of us maybe can learn to build a tool or two into our own day-to-day lives?
Yeah, for sure. Breathing, just quickly, the importance, like we said, biomechanics. I'll get into that. I actually have a few slides that I can show everyone so you can visualize and actually see inside of yourself, which I think is the first step. But it's funny because it's one of our vital elements that keep us alive, right? Food, water, air. But we don't give much thought to air. We spend a lot of time on our diets and, what we should be eating and drinking, but not much with our oxygen. And it's the most important thing that keeps us alive, right? It's also our energy source. That is what gives us energy, makes our muscles move. It steers our state, which we'll talk about. We'll get into actually going through a little breath journey so you can see how that happens. It's one of only a few direct ways into our nervous system, direct. So you can control your heart rate, influence your heart rate just by the way you breathe. And then, so let's get into the biomechanics a bit. Let me share this because I love that aspect. Obviously from a musculoskeletal background. And it's one thing, again, a lot of people don't talk about. They talk about the energy, the nervous system. So just a few slides, right? So here's what we call our thoracic cage, which is our ribs, our sternum here in the front, and then our spine in the back. And our thoracic cage is this amazing armor, right? Which holds inside of it our lungs and our heart, right? So those are the only things up here. And then underneath that are all the rest of our organs, right? Our stomach, our spleen, liver, all of our intestines are below that, right? So here even if you just put your hand on your chest like Damon's doing, you can kind of just feel, even if you push in up top, especially, you can make yourself breathe. So it's funny when we look at anatomy like this, we think like there's all kinds of space in the body, right? And really your lungs are literally right behind these ribs. And then in between the ribs, we have muscles. They're called intercostal muscles, which I'll show you a picture of, right? So this is our armor, but this is not armor that you want to be stiff, right? Because our lungs sit inside of here. And how do we get air? When our lungs expand. So we need our lungs to expand. If we have this armor that doesn't move on the outside of us, we're not going to get much movement of our lungs, right? So this is actually a very supple move. We want to keep the movement in it. And the way we keep movement in joints is move them, right? That's the only way that they get nutrients and blood flow is if we move them. I know last week when Kara was talking about the spine, right? The spine is such an interesting thing because people think it's this delicate piece and we have to walk around all the time in this neutral posture. And, you know, we can't move it around. Well, we actually should be moving it around. Now, if we have 500 pounds on our back and we're doing a squat, obviously we want to have, you know, good posture for that, but we should be moving it just as we should be moving our ribs. So inside of these ribs, on the bottom 5 or 6 ribs, is our most important muscle. Yes. Your most important muscle is not your bicep. It's not your hamstring. No, it is your diaphragm. That is our breathing muscle. Okay. So your lungs don't have their own muscles that expand the lungs. The diaphragm is what controls your lungs, right? So the diaphragm or the lungs sit right on top, literally attached to the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is that sheet that's right underneath the lungs. And it's called the diaphragm because it separates the contents from our thoracic cavity from our abdominal cavity, right? It sits right in the middle. So if you just go down the bottom to the bottom of your sternum, so find this breastbone in the front, walk your fingers down, you'll find a little valley inside of here, right? Sometimes it might be tender, not meaning anything's wrong. It's just probably tender because your body is like, hey, you've never touched me there before, so I'm going to give you a little response. But if you just take a breath in and take a breath out, keep the fingers there, breathe in. Try to hook up underneath the ribs just a little bit. Don't go too hard if it's tender. Now, what you should be feeling is when you breathe out, you can kind of sink your fingers up underneath there. When you breathe in, it's pushing your fingers out, right? So again, that sheet sits inside of there. Now, when you're breathing in, this parachute, that's what we like to call it, parachute, when you breathe in, it's dropping down because remember, it's attached to your lungs. So it needs to drop down and that's what expands the lungs. So now you have a lower pressure up here than the air and the air just comes in just because you made them bigger. It's pretty cool. So when you breathe in, diaphragm flattens out, literally squishes the guts contents below. When you breathe out, parachute comes up. Almost think of it as a little jellyfish, right? So here's a little, him breathing in, flattens out, brings in the air up as you breathe out. So could you feel that when you had your fingers up underneath here? Who could feel that, how your diaphragm actually moves? Yeah. Pretty cool. Thumbs up. So you want to know that, right? That's important. And it's important that we breathe in the right way. When we're breathing in, your stomach will actually come out because your abs are relaxing. The diaphragm needs to drop down. It's literally squishing all of those contents below. When you breathe out, it's coming up. So benefits if we're actually using our diaphragm. So if I just breathe in through my mouth, just breathe in through your mouth right now. You can even see my shoulders. So I can do very shallow breaths, right? Maybe just moving air around at the top part of my lungs, but now breathe in through your nose. Feel the difference because it has to go through this little teeny hole, and it actually spins around these little things called turbinates in your nose. It cleans and conditions the air. And what it does is that all that pressure makes you have to use your diaphragm more. So even just using your nose to breathe will help you breathe better using your diaphragm. So a few other things with the biomechanics. Like I said, it actually squishes, it massages your organs. Your lymph nodes to your organs also sit below the diaphragm. So we're massaging the lymph nodes to your organs, which is very healthy. We're moving. If you just stick your hands on the sides of your ribs, take a breath in. You can feel how the ribs rotate up and out. Breathing out, you can feel them. You breathe all the way out, you can feel how they rotate down, actually squeezing the air out. And if you just rub your fingers along the sides, you can feel the ribs, right, or those bony parts. And then in between those ribs are muscles. Those are called your intercostal muscles, which inter just means between, costal is rib. So those guys are the ones that are going to help us in that inspiration to create space for the lungs. So we got a lot of benefits with biomechanics. And again, the way you breathe matters. Obviously, you're alive, so you're breathing right. But we can definitely make it better, especially as humans today with our, sitting environments, stressful environments that are having an impact on our everyday breathing patterns.
On that point, Trisha, sorry, Damon, how is stress impacting is it the nerves? Because again, I think about what we say when you're getting triggered, do the breath practice, but I see a lot of people breathing up here, day to day, and in just getting people to remind themselves just to breathe deeply. We do a 5-5-6 breath practice sometimes before these classes, and it's really kind of nice to just get people to settle in. But I'm just wondering how the impact of stress has on not only our biomechanics but also our nervous system.
Yeah. So what's amazing with the breath, like I said before, it's one way we can directly influence our nervous system. So breathing is obviously happening all the time, right? So our brain is sensing the environment, it's sensing our internal environment, like what's happening. Do I need to speed up my heart rate? Do I need to activate myself, mobilize energy, right? If I need to do that, the brain's going to go to the phrenic nerve, speed up my diaphragm, I'm going to speed up my breathing, which is going to speed up my heart rate. Right? If I am calm, I'm going to slow down. If I lay down, my body senses, okay, everything's calm here. All right, I'm going to slow my breathing down. Now, what's cool is that also works the other way, which not many things do in the body, right? I can't just tell, my brain's telling my pancreas to release enzymes when I have food, but I can't just be like, release enzymes, pancreas. No, but with breathing, if the way I change my breathing, if I breathe faster, if I'm focused on my inhale, More specifically, I'm going to increase my heart rate, right? So if you need a little bit of energy, that's something you can do. If you focus on your exhale, making it longer, then you're going to decrease your heart rate. So literally, it's one of the only ways to directly buffer stress. And we'll practice one. So at the end of this, we're going to do a fun little breath journey where all this stuff, you're actually going to feel what's happening in your body.
So in the work that you're doing, oh, Damien, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that with the anatomy and the diaphragm, it's in general, and just seeing the slides, I just wanted to quickly open it up to people. Did you get a sense of what Trisha was talking about? Was there anything that triggered or that you were curious about? Just wanted to kind of make it some space real quick for the group if you had any questions.
I was wondering about the diaphragm being the most important muscle in the body, which I learned today. Is breathing the one and only way to tone it? And is there like is it advisable to spend some time toning it? Yeah. So like, can I train myself up? Can I help my diaphragm to be even better?
Great question. Yes. It's just like any other muscle, which is super cool. It's the only skeletal muscle we have inside of us, right? We have all of our organs that are smooth muscle, but the diaphragm is the only skeletal muscle. So yes, I say treat it like any other muscle, stretch it, massage it, work its strength, work its endurance, work its full range of motion, right? That's something that we tend to lose in our entire body if we don't use our full ranges of motion. So the diaphragm's the same thing. We want to have it to have its full excursion to be coming up and its full excursion going down. So just working a breath, pulling it all the way in, pulling it all the way out.
Yeah, that is a great question, Joseph. And I think sometimes, even I love breath practice and have done a lot of breathing in my life. And sometimes I'm not exactly sure whether I am really fully exercising my diaphragm. Is it as simple as saying that if you're taking a nice long breath in in kind of releasing all of that air all the way out, that you can be pretty sure that your diaphragm, that parachute or the jellyfish, was making a full range of motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you're working it and you're noticing, especially if you're doing it for a few days, you may notice, oh, maybe I'm getting a little more excursion here. What's interesting, I find a lot of people are very hesitant on exhales, right? And they don't want to let all of their air out. So that's one place that you'll find that people have hesitation. Breath holds. There's many biochemical reasons to do breath holds, but also it's essentially an isometric contraction, right? So if I breathe in, I'm contracting my diaphragm, and then I can hold. So now I'm holding it in a contracted isometric fashion. When I breathe out, it's relaxing, but then I can also hold at both ends. So again, I'm working that end range of motion.
Any tips on that? Because I think, in that exhale, if I'm holding, because like a box breath, you go like a 5, 5, 5, 5, and I think there's also the benefit of the vagal toning that goes on if you can like breathe in 5, exhale 10, for example, and put a little stress on the system. So it's not just impacting your diaphragm, but you're also building in that kind of the resiliency between your nervous system and your body as well. So it seems like there's like a 2-for-1 when you kind of hold long, exhale longer and hold, because you're doing two things. At least that's been my experience. I don't know if that's science-based or is it just my own kind of experience in that journey.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely, that's the thing, is looking at all the things you're working, the biomechanics, the nervous system. So what's really interesting is when we breathe in, our heart rate speeds up. Okay, because diaphragm's dropping down, so now my heart actually has more space. And they say it even gets a little bigger. So now if my heart's a little bit bigger, the blood running through it has more space. So it needs to speed the blood up to get through that bigger volume. And then when I breathe out, it's going to actually compact my heart, right? Because it's coming up. So now my heart's going to be a little more compacted. So then my heart rate's going to slow down. So that's what heart rate, when you hear about heart rate variability, that's what heart rate variability is the beats in the inhale, which speed up, and the beats in the exhale when they slow down. Fascinating.
Which is a key indicator for, inflammation in the body. It's really an interesting indicator that it's becoming more and more predominant. But I have another question, because the part of the discovery, at least with Wim's breath practice, is not only managing the nervous system, but there was also around the immune system, which was kind of a phenomenon that was kind of new, because they didn't think that we could do that. And I just remember being in Poland with you and doing seeing the increase of our pH balance going up as we did more breath practice. So I'm just wondering about some of the benefits and the biology of breath, as well as the mechanics. So could you speak a little bit about kind of that component as well? Because I thought that was really fascinating, and it's kind of what set the Wim Hof out there into the stratosphere in terms of popularity as a practice.
Yeah, that research study alone is definitely what put Wim on the map. But we'll back up just one sec. So with biochemistry, we're bringing in oxygen, we're blowing off CO2. CO2 is simply just a byproduct for any energy that we use in our body. So movement, my heart beating, breathing, right? So that's our exchange, is breathing that off, breathing in oxygen. Now, in Wim Hof specifically, what we're doing is we're focusing more on our inhale, and we have a little bit faster breaths than normal. So we're blowing off more CO2 than we would normally. We're also moving the diaphragm much faster pace than normal, which can put us into more of a sympathetic or fight or flight. I like to call it just an action state, right? So if we put ourselves into more of a little bit of an action state, it actually helps our immune system. What it showed in that research study specifically was Wim went into the hospital and he got injected with part of an endotoxin. So basically it's just a dead shell of an E. coli bacteria. And all that does is allow it, when you inject it, the body will respond to it. And you usually get very sick for hours, fever, nausea, chills. And when they injected Wim, he only had a minor headache for 10 minutes. Now, he was doing the breathing while he was being injected and for a while afterwards. And what they found in the blood is that he was increasing in his adrenaline, which was helping his immune system. So his inflammatory proteins actually decreased, and his anti-inflammatory proteins increased. Cool, right? But then now we have this Wim who, he is an N=1, but maybe he's a mutant. So they repeated the study with 12 guys. 12 guys trained with Wim, 12 didn't. They were in the control group. And all 12 guys only trained with Wim for 10 days before the injection. And all 12 of them only had minor symptoms for about 15 minutes maximum. And all 12 that were in the control group were very sick. So using the Wim Hof or using that faster, concentrating on your inhales can actually help. And that's what's kept me healthy and, not getting colds. When I start feeling a little sore throat or a stomach bug, I'll start doing that breathing and boom, it'll be gone the next day.
Which is incredible. And I think it's counterintuitive to a lot of the popular language around we want to be out of stress, right? And I think a lot of breath has been tilted towards the direction of down regulate, calm down. Everybody wants to calm down. And it is true that we are, in most of us, in a chronic state of stress. But I think what you're saying, and I think what's really important, is that in these smaller, more targeted times when we go into that more action, fight, flight, the signal we're sending to our body is to turn on, get the epinephrine, the adrenaline, and that cascade effect is actually bolstering our immune system and fighting off what needs to be, tended to within our bodies. So that just seems like such a smart way to start to think about breath as a tool biomechanically with the diaphragm, but then also what state am I in and what type of breath do I need? And it almost feels superpower in nature when you frame it that way. And as you say, the science bears it out as well. Fairly important during a global pandemic, maybe, to have that skill at our disposal.
Yes. Yes. And this gave us light to how important breathing actually is, right? And how delicate our lungs are and how important it is for us to keep this healthy. There's a great new book out called, what is it? Take My Breath. It's written by a pulmonologist. I'll put it in the chat. It's amazing because he just loves the lungs and how important they are. And, why we're even existing on this planet is because of oxygen. And we actually only found out in the 70s of how we create oxygen on this planet, where it actually started from. But it's a great book.
So Trisha,
yeah.
you have additional practices. I mean, what are some other breath practices that you use? Because again, it sounds like you use it not only to activate the sympathetic, but also the parasympathetic. So what is a day in the life of Trisha, and what are some of the different breath practices that you kind of go to? What are some of your go-to ones that you have?
Yeah, Wim Hof is one I usually try to do in the mornings. Like Damon was saying, a lot of them are more the parasympathetic side, which obviously a lot of us need. But I think we could also make ourselves much more resilient to stress if we give ourselves short bouts of it that we know are in control, right? And then we recover. There's going to be stress no matter what.
Could you give us a brief example of how someone might do a practice, without, again, hopefully sitting down, but I mean, because I my experience of doing it, it was kind of a good thing to sit down or lay down where you're kind of doing that activation. But do you have like or we were doing the brown fat breathing and some other ones as well, but what are some of the ways that people, is it just breathing quicker? I mean, is that really the art of it?
Yes, breathing quicker and focusing on the inhale.
Okay.
So no matter what, the way you did it, and of course, Wim, is based off different things. Tumo, as we all know, there's nothing new that comes along. I mean, people have been doing all this stuff since the beginning of time. So Wim Hof, if you want to look, there's a free app where you can learn. He actually takes you through the practice, but it's basically 30 to 40 deep breaths where you're again focusing on the exhale and just a relaxed exhale. It's 30 to 40 of those, and then you go into a breath hold. And then you repeat that 3 or 4 times. So at the end, when we do this little breath journey, we're not going to do a full Wim Hof method, but I'll show you even just taking 5 of those breaths. You can feel your heart rate increase. And you can even feel maybe you get a little bit of tingling because we're blowing off CO2 very fast. That's what's so powerful about the breathing is you can change your biochemistry very, very fast.
So you do your Wim Hof in the morning. What's the rest of your day look like? What are some of the different tools or practices that you have?
Yeah, so Wim Hof in the morning, I do some other stuff. I do some mobility. I'm actually developing my own breathing class. So doing a little bit of mobility to open stuff up. Then I'll go into a few different patterns, which I'll take you guys through a few rounds of Wim Hof. And then throughout the day. So that's what I was going to leave everyone with as far as this art of practice of where to start. It's simply just awareness of your breath. I think with anything that we do, any behavior changes, number one, you have to start with awareness. To even know what you do, where you are to where you want to go. So just that's how I started, just simply being aware of my breath throughout the day. How long were my exhales and inhales? Was I breathing in through my nose, right? I usually do a few calming breaths before I eat. I think that's one thing about, everyone's talking about gut health. And obviously it's better for us to eat and digest in a more calm state, because that's what rest and digest and that parasympathetic is. And one way we can get there very fast is with our breathing. So again, if we're focusing on those long exhales right before you start breathing while you are eating, that will help in your digestion. So I do that there. And then at night, I usually do some kind of, I'll take you guys through a few things that I do at night, even just getting out of here, right? When we lay down, for some reason, this gets the loudest. And that's the hardest thing, especially people waking up. I do a lot of stuff with sleep as well, and waking up in the middle of the night. That's one thing that's really hard, is once you get spinning up here, it's hard to get out of it. So going right to your breath. And again, if you don't learn or don't remember everything here, my saying is always trust your exhale. So when you need to calm down or get out of your head, decrease your heart rate, trust your exhale. Long exhales. And we'll play around with one that Dr. Huberman, who's a neuroscientist at Stanford, he just, there was some new research that just came out on what is called a physiological sigh, which is a double inhale and a relaxed exhale. So I'll put some of these in too. So it's just a, so we're finding, again, these ways that are very fast. This is one of the only, breathing is one of the only real-time things that you have right at your fingertips. So this isn't something you necessarily need to go do, an hour a day to train. I like to train it just so my body knows how to access it very fast when I need it, right? If I'm anxious, if I'm panicking about something, my body's like, oh, I know where to go. Boom. So it's good to train that, but that long exhale or the physiological sigh is real time at your fingertips right there for you. So I just play around with my breath. When I'm on a plane, I play around with what I call target breathing. I breathe into different parts. I do intentional breathing when I think about it. And I think that's the best place to start, is just having awareness with it.
I'm going to put trust your exhale on the back of our shirts, just so you know.
I love it.
That's awesome. Any questions or comments from the group? I'm just curious to know, how aware are you of your breath? Because I think, to me, that's, to your point, that awareness. It's the one thing, there are times where I found, as I kind of went through my own breath practice, when I started to elevate my awareness, how often I found myself not breathing, like holding my breath. Of course, my brain kicked in and I actually breathed, but there'd be times where I would just be sitting there and not aware that I wasn't breathing, and I'm just like, gosh, and then also recognizing the triggers, what was causing that, and because I have anxiety. And so that was part of my own getting out of that pattern, also allowed me to deal with my own anxiety. Right. So, because the holding of the breath was telling my brain danger, so it was a fascinating kind of a level of awareness for me around breath. But I'm wondering, the rest of you, how often are you really aware of your breath? Rhodey, anyone? Basil, Andrea?
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of what you were saying, Scott. It's more that conscious effort to realize it, unless it's more of an intentional act to really practice.
Yeah.
I mean, I find more so not that I stop breathing. It's just it just gets so low. Just my breathing gets so settled, so low, and I've kind of found that doing work kind of in a virtual environment, it really like when I put on my Muse. It's basically about the same as far as just doing meditation. So it's kind of getting in that relaxed state and practice that breathing and getting more into that conscious effort of it or the unconscious effort of it. But Trisha, like you say, that long hold, that exhale, and just using that exhale is so good. It feels so good.
Yeah. Thanks, Avery. Priming it to pump prior to a run or a hike. I know that I've experimented with WIM before I swim, or versus after, and I actually do better before. So I keep tweaking it, and then after I don't nearly have as much retention capacity because my body's still, heart rate's still pretty high after a few thousand yards in the pool. So I like to experiment with it, before, after. So it's been fascinating. I love kind of tweaking it here and there.
Actually, and I want to just build off of what Avery's saying and ask you, Trisha. We all warm up before we're going to work out. Do you have a regimen or suggestions for, in this case, priming the pump before a run or a hike? Is that a good idea? Are there specific ways to do that? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, for sure. I work with a lot of athletes, and I speak and work at 29029. If you've ever heard of them, you basically climb the elevation of Everest in 36 hours straight on a ski mountain. So I go there and help their breathing before we do some priming, and then during. So before I do some of the mobility stuff that I teach, right? We want to have nice mobile spine, thoracic cage, our ribs. I'll go in underneath here. I call it monkey fingers. I'll go up underneath the ribs, kind of just like how I had you guys doing. I'll do this like literally throughout my day even. I'll do this, standing in line, grocery store. I won't do it on the person in front of me, just myself. But so just getting a nice release in there, making sure I have full range of motion. So I'll do a few things just to open it up. And then I'll go through nose breathing for sure, just to get myself into that priming of using my nose, even though it seems harder and you're not getting as much oxygen, but that's actually not true at all. You're getting more oxygen if you're breathing in through your nose. So I'll prime nose breathing, and I'll prime my pattern, which is starting in the belly, stacking the air on top into the chest, and exhaling, right? So I'll prime that. There's always the time, right? When you go running, when you go hiking, in those first maybe 2-4 minutes where they suck, where you're like, man, this is going to be terrible. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, right? And then once you get going, like, oh, this is great. So if you do that breathing before, you can get that, that basically will take you through that second gear without having to go through it. It's amazing.
You're definitely preaching to the choir with Scott and I, for sure. We saw Dr. Humerman about 4 years ago, and I'm just a huge fan of the way he breaks down the neuroscience and of course the breathing. You just said gear. I also like and follow Brian McKenzie and the guys that do the power shift and shift now. But I do think that the concept around nasal breathing. And, James Nestor's book did a really good job of kind of explaining a lot of that too. But I do think that's an area that's tough for people to get. And to your point, like it feels harder. What's a kind of a typical or maybe a simple tool to use, kind of gear 1, gear 2, for maybe, as we think about this priming before a workout, by using nasal? I guess, is that a concept that you also endorse? And are there ways to deepen that nasal breath so that you're getting a little more oxygen, and kind of playing around with that for those of us who may jump on the Peloton afterwards, or kind of do some kind of simple exercise?
Yeah, beforehand, I would work nose only. I like working nose only, not even going through the gears. The gears is where you're going to start. Obviously, you're going to get better at nose breathing the more you nose breathe, right? I love one of my mentors, Dr. Andrea Spina, always says, whatever you're doing right now, you're getting better at.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're not breathing through your nose, you're getting better at not breathing through your nose. But if you're breathing through your nose, you're getting better. So the gears are going to, really be dependent on the person of where you're at, what your endurance. But to start out, just go nose only as long as you can. And then when you need to go nose, mouth, right? And then when you need to go mouth, go there. And you'll see improvements as you go along, especially if you're just more conscious about nose breathing throughout your day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a real tangible way for us as a group to start to listen to your body more, and also to start to measure it. I've kind of done that where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do this run just nasal only. And then I start to pick it up. I'm like, oh, where's the point when I actually need to breathe out of my mouth? And oh, now where's the point when I actually have to breathe in through my mouth? And it's a really fascinating thing. And in this flow space that we're in as well, that kind of is under the umbrella of novelty. A lot of what Trisha is saying is there's a curiosity of our own selves, these monkey fingers underneath your ribs, and just kind of treating this whole thing with more of a wide-eyed curiosity is going to also drive our focus and attention into what we're doing. And we'll be collecting better information and enjoying it more at the same time. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I had a question. I don't know if this is true, Trisha, but I heard it somewhere, something around like balancing, is it ions, breathing through your nose? Because there's sometimes I can breathe through my left nose or both nostrils, and then sometimes they close off. And doesn't that do something around balancing something in the body? I don't know if I'm stating it accurately, but I had read somewhere, I don't know if it was in some sort of like crazy magazine that I often jump into so periodically, but there was something around different times of the day I could breathe through my right nostril, other times I can't, and it has something to do with just kind of the balancing of something in our bodies. But I don't know enough about it to say anything other than the fact, is that an accurate statement? Or is
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know too much about it too. I know that some yogi breaths and pranayamas do that. Everything that you're doing on one side of your body goes to the other side of the brain. So it has something to do with that.
Yeah.
One way, which Oxygen Advantage, Patrick McEwen is another great person to follow and learn from. He is from the Buteyko School of Breathing, which is, again, very, very old, but it has to do with a lot with nasal breathing. And even if you just take a breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and you hold your nose, hold your breath for 5 seconds. And then you breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. Just do that for 10 seconds. So probably another 5. Hold the nose, hold the breath for 5. And inhaling through the nose. Exhaling through the nose. And just relax. That's one way that actually opens up your airways. So we have what's called nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, or it opens up blood vessels. It opens up airways that we get when we nose breathe. So that's one reason. And another reason why we usually get more oxygen delivery from breathing in through our nose. The other reason we get more oxygen is because we're breathing through that pressure. So we're getting full expansion of our lungs. We're getting much more exchange of that CO2 and oxygen when we're getting that full inflation.
That's awesome. I love that. I've never done that before. The nose hold on the exhale. That felt really good. I'm mindful of time. I want you to be able to take us through a little journey before the hour is up.
Let's do it.
Right.
All right. I have allergies. Kim said I have allergies, and now I can actually breathe through my nose for the first time in days.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Oh.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that trick works. And that's another thing. That's what I do usually in my whole sequence of my breathing. But you only have to do it a few times usually, and you're feeling good. So, all right. So just getting comfortable, seated, grounding the feet. You can close your eyes or open them, whatever's more comfortable for you. And just checking in with yourself first. Just noticing what your natural pattern is. What state are you in? Can you feel your heartbeat on the inside? Now we're going to go into some breaths. We're going to be focused on our inhale. So it's going to be a nice big inhale and just a relaxed exhale. So we'll go into that now. Inhaling and just letting it go and going right back into the inhale. And one more. And then just stop. Just going back to normal breathing and checking in. What's different? Feel your heart rate speed up. Maybe create a little heat. Now we'll go back into that same breath, inhaling focused, fully in. Relaxed exhale. Two more of those. Now, instead of stopping and go back to normal breath, I want you to extend your exhales. Just a nice short inhale and a long exhale. Again, noticing your heart rate or your state. And we'll go again into that inhale focus, going fully in. Relaxed exhale. Right back in, inhale. 2 more of those. And now I want you to go into the double inhale, in through the nose, double inhale, relaxed exhale. Noticing what changes. Noticing what you have influence over. You can change your heart rate. Now we're going to go into humming. So I want you to inhale through the nose and hum on the exhale. Humming helps us release more of that nitric oxide, opening up the airways. Also noticing how long you can exhale with the hum. And now into breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just going to do one other pattern. I know you guys talked about the box breathing. We'll go through one box, which just listen to my voice. I'll take you through it. So after this next inhale and exhale, we're going to inhale 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2, 1, exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2, 1. One more round. Inhaling 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2, 1, exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Last hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Regular breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. We're going to go through one more. Dr. Wiles, 4, 7, 8. So just wait till I count you down. We'll inhale 4, hold 7, and then we're going to exhale through pursed lips. So after this next inhale and exhale, inhaling 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale through pursed lips. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more of those. Inhaling. 3, 2, 1. Hold. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling through pursed lips. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And back to normal breathing. Just taking note of how you feel. And opening your eyes slowly if they're closed.
I'd like to invite everybody just to type maybe one word in the chat box as to if you could describe your state right now. What would you use?
Awesome.
That was beautiful.
It really was.
And to your point, I think when you said how simple, and there's like a smorgasbord of methods, that's what I love about it. So Trisha, you said you're starting, you have kind of you're doing some online workshops around the breath stuff and the biomechanics stuff. Is there, I know we have your link to your website, but anything coming up that people might be interested in?
Yeah, I'm working on redesigning my website. So I do work with corporate groups, athletes, and I'm going to start a public class. It's going to be called Breath Fit, where I put in all my stuff as far as the mobility work, and then take you through a little bit of a journey of the breathing, similar to what we did. So look out for those. Instagram, I also need to get back on. So I'll put some stuff through you guys once it's up and ready to go. And yeah, I just challenge everyone with their practice with this is just start out with awareness. First thing in the morning, when you open your eyes, before a meal, and then when you lay down at night. Just those 3 anchor points in your day. Remember, you have to have a cue in order to do a habit. So after I wake up and open my eyes, I will check in with my breath. So just a few times throughout your day, start there, and we'll build on that.
That's awesome. Well, and I hope you're willing to play with us in May when people decide what practice or practices they're going to be playing with us, and we'll invite you into the community and stay involved with InteroFlow and the community we're building, because again, it's that practice that we're trying to help people understand and recognize that there's a lot more that they have access to and they have control over. And I think breath is definitely, as you point, to me, it's my go-to one. So I really appreciate you sharing and giving your time, Trisha.
Yeah, me too, Trisha. That was amazing. I really love your approach. Just how simple it is, but just how grounded it is in our own physiology. And here, like one of the adages that we use is take the next best step. And I like at the end there where you just framed it around when you wake up, become aware of your breath. Before you eat, become aware of your breath. Before you go to sleep, become aware of your breath. And the ripple effect ends up being really profound, because I think if you start to bookend and add within meal breathing, that the breath practice itself continues to expand, and fascination with how much more control over our own state we have. So yeah, thank you so much for your wisdom, and stay connected to us for sure. And frankly, I would urge people, if breath is one of your practices, Trisha's program might be a really nice thing to supplement while you're doing the art of practice within our program in May. So awesome stuff, Trisha. That was amazing.
Woohoo. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.